The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Brandon Nutting. Brandon is the VP of Product and Data Science at MVPindex. Brandon, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, so Brandon, let's start with the usual format, but we're certainly going to focus on what new developments have happened. But as always, we start with the guests. So could you give us a reminder of your background and your journey in technology from where you got started, couple of roles you've held along the way, and take us up to today as the VP of Product and Data Science at MVPindex.
Sure. So I'll do the very abbreviated version. Essentially, background in advertising public relations, worked in computer science, had an understanding of computer science, and wound up going on and getting a master's and PhD in advertising public relations and social psychology, and doing some research on how your brain responds to media messages, how you perceive sports content. Did a little bit of publishing in that field, wound up becoming a college professor. Started at the University of South Dakota and then eventually moved on to the University of Nebraska. And then while I was there, I'd published some papers on sports specifically. And a friend from grad school remembered that I had written some of the curriculum for social media and stuff for teaching that. And he said that he had a company that needed some help. And they reached out to me to do some consulting work. And that translated into essentially starting the data science division for the company and really putting more of a focus on data science as a specific focus of the company. And so I joined as a director of data science in 2020. And all the way to the present, I moved into the VP role around this time last year, focused on data science projects and thinking about future-facing states, finding other data sources and things we lean into. And then eventually our VP of products moved on, and it became apparent that a lot of the work that I was doing was very translating into product. So I wound up taking over the product role as well. So now it kind of functions as a data science being the leading edge of a lot of things and doing research and then implementing those all the way through to product.
Nice. And congratulations for the promotions. So look, let's set the stage again, please. Tell us all about MVPindex, who you are, what you do, mission of the business, and then we'll talk about some of the exciting developments that have happened with the product over the past 18 months or so.
So MVPindex is really more or less going by MVP now, dropping the index a little bit, but omni-channel sponsorship platform measurement. So the primary focus of the company is to be the go-to for sponsorship measurement and understanding across all platforms. So social, broadcast, anything, even podcasting stuff we can get into. If something is sponsored and there's something to be measured on that side of it, we put that together and it's all done in an automated platform way. So not a services-based industry, being a software as a service company and ingesting content in a quick way across the social and broadcast space or bread and butter. To give you an example, you're a professional sports team. You play on Sunday, we would have the scans of all of your gameplay, which would then break out all of the sponsors that were seen during the gameplay and assign the valuations to those sponsorship detections available in the platform for you to be able to look at, compare to other teams within your league, and then be able to build some reports on that. And the same for the social media space. You could find every post that's been made by your team and look at the value for all those sponsorships, and ultimately teams will go through and build reports. Let's say you're sponsored by a specific company. They will build an end of season recap showing all the value and all the times that company was detected within any of the media channels where it was put together. And so we do service both sides. So we service the brand who's buying into those properties and also the properties who are selling to those brands. So we try to be the universal source of truth for what the actual value of that is, because we service both the property side and the brand side. So we're working off of the same middle ground of understanding of that data and that value.
Thank you so much for that. It's good to just get the recap of what you're doing. But let's jump straight into what's happened over the last 18 months. You and I were talking off air a few days ago and talking about a lot of the exciting success and advancement that the data org has made. So could you walk us through the current state of your entire data organization and day to day, how you're utilizing data science, machine learning, automation to make MVP such an impactful platform for your customers?
Absolutely. So the things that we've done in the last little while is really sat down and think, okay, how is sponsorship bought and sold? And so that's really pivoted the entire way we were thinking about some things. So the way we described everything, and our competitors and everyone in the space will talk about it as logo detection, right? So your goal is you have some space, whether it's social or you have broadcasting, and so you go through and you find the logos. That's how it's described all the time. And the problem is that's not exactly how sponsorships are bought and sold. And so that made us really go back to the drawing board, thinking specifically about a data-centric focus and saying, how are sponsorships bought and sold? How do we design a system that assesses that in a way that allows us to better understand it on both sides of the fence? So the best way I can describe this is you're a company, you're a professional football team, and you have a set of assets that you sell. And you will sell this billboard or you'll sell this sideline graphic or whatever it is that you sell. You don't care what's on that graphic, or what the actual creative is. What you care about is the billboard itself. And when it comes to valuing that, you want to know what the value for that billboard or signage is. You don't care what's on the signage. So that makes the space of logo detection kind of stupid. It's a way that we made it work, but we really started leaning into the technology and the way that artificial intelligence, specifically neural networks, work, and trying to better understand how we could, one, make the data cleaner, because anyone who's in this space, logo detection is not great. Logo detection has a lot of flaws. You can get it to a decent way, but it's always going to have issues, and it's always going to need an extra set of eyes on top of it. So we started focusing on the tech out there that would allow us to make it cleaner and better, but also be more centered towards sponsorship and how sponsorships are actually bought and sold. So we rebuilt our entire set of technology around that thought. And we also sought to do some patent work and everything. So we actually have some of the final stages of the patent work being developed right now. I have a draft back and everything in my inbox. So come to find out, we landed on a great way to do this, and we brought it all in-house. And so we changed the way that our entire tech stack works and how we're actually using neural nets, how we put those together in a sponsorship way, and then how we produce the results. And we're finding much, much higher success with that. So that's a big thing that we've done in the last little stretch since we last talked, which has been around a year and a half, 2 years now. And so that's the big overhaul that we've done. And then we still have a bunch of things that we're doing from a machine learning standpoint on the platform side, because we have access to all of these different data sets, and we've centralized them in the last 2 years. They're all being put in the same place so that we can actually put them together. And so we've started putting in some ways to understand the data in a more meaningful way, not for people who are looking at the data, because us as data scientists, we understand the data, we can run all these different things on them. But the goal is to develop insights, right? The goal is for those data points to tell a story. And so we've doubled down a lot of our efforts in creating automated storytelling layers, where if there's some anomaly that's presented with the sponsorship data in any way, normally you'd have an analyst that would have to start with just looking at that data and trying to figure that out. And we still want analysts. We still have great analysts. We're not saying we're going to replace analysts by any stretch of the imagination, but we really want to help the analysts tell a story with the data before they even have to dig in. And so we're starting to use machine learning approaches to understand how all those data sets interact and then explain anomalies within that data. And you have to have a ton of contextual data to do that correctly. And that's what we've doubled down on making sure that we have, is that contextual data to understand when an outlier occurs, and then what the data is, what's actually happening within the data from a storytelling perspective once that outlier has been identified.
With you changing the landscape of your technology and bringing all this data centrally, and then on the machine learning side, focusing on how you guys can spot these anomalies, what does that then mean for the customer? What new benefits are they getting from MVP that previously weren't available to them 2 years ago?
So from the computer vision side, it means that they're going to be able to look at assets both from a buying perspective and a selling perspective. But it also means that no matter how crazy the landscape gets in the sponsorship space, we're going to be able to adapt to it. The example I can give you is the NHL has rolled out what they're calling digitally enhanced dasher boards. And what these are is an ability to project the advertising on the dasher board or the side of the ice rink. And traditionally, those are painted sponsorships, and so they're static. Somebody buys one for the entire season, it's painted on the side. You largely ignore them when you're watching hockey games. But the digitally enhanced ones allows you to digitally place them. So you could think, okay, we can digitally place just what it was before, but now we can maybe rotate them out by game. No, they took it a step further. You can take over a whole section. You can build little like advertising commercials on there. They have cars driving on it. They have a Chipotle burrito unwrapping on the side. And so it draws your eyes to these things much like 30-second commercials do. And that in itself is a challenge because you can't train a burrito as a logo. You could try, it's not going to go well. And so you have to care about the asset and you have to worry about it in a different way. And so what we're able to do is it doesn't matter what's on those boards. We are able to capture all of that data regardless of what it is. And then to add even more complexity to that, if your hockey game that I just described is airing, you're the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Detroit Red Wings. If it's airing in Detroit, they sell ads that go on that rotational dasher board specific to Detroit. And then the feed that airs in Florida for the Tampa feed for the Lightning, they can resell different ads there. And they will see completely different ads in their market area. And so you now technically have two broadcasts you have to worry about because what sponsorship is being seen on one is not being seen on the other. And then you could even do a third. If you do like an international feed, it's going to have different sold spots. The online OT feed that eventually goes up and gets stored for someone to watch on demand, that could have another set of ads placed on those. It's a much more challenging situation that traditional logo detection capabilities are not going to be able to handle.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
You actually listened back to the first episode, and in it we talked about what you want to accomplish in the year ahead, and happy to report that you guys were able to accomplish pretty much everything you set out to. So doing the same exercise again, let's look ahead, and what does 2023 look like for you guys? What are you working towards? What are you excited about? And what do you hope to accomplish in 2023 and beyond?
Yeah, maybe because last time I said we want to get into the broadcast space and we want to feel good about that. And we did. We got in the broadcast space and we're providing things to our clients that no one else in the space can really touch. And so that's great. And so going into 2023, the goal now is surfacing more of that centralized data repository. So we as data scientists, we have that available to us. We can run all kinds of neat queries and we can do different things. And we have machine learning tools that let us run all these different things. But trying to shift the focus to allow the client to be able to see that and maybe ask some questions they didn't really know they could ask. But ultimately providing, if you're a client, you sign on, we provide you a report of your sponsorships. And that's great. And we even provide some contextual data. We'll compare you to everyone else because it doesn't, at the end of the day, if I tell you something's worth $100, it doesn't matter if you don't know if that's good or not. Like that $100 is relative to what? Are we last in the league or second in the league? So we do a really good job of providing a lot of that contextual data. But what we want to do is then take it a step further and provide you who is working with whom and what is the performance data across that space. So it's one thing for you to get your reports, but if you can log in and say, here's our reports for all of our brands, we are working with these brands who, you know what, I'm just curious, even though we outperform this other team, who are they working with? What's going on over there? And so you can get to those different data sets and you can understand that. Basically, we can do that internally, but we haven't given the users the ability to really dive into the data. I jokingly call it the Wikipedia effect. Like we want to allow our users to get on the platform and become experts in the sponsorship landscape, both social, broadcast, anywhere that it exists, and understand not just how they're doing, but how anyone in the space is doing. Because when you're an informed person, you are armed to be able to sell those ads. You're armed to be able to put it into context when you're doing negotiations, when you're talking to media companies, because the value of all these sponsors has just continued to balloon. Like naming rights and all this is so valuable. And so arming all of those people with that data allows them to make better decisions regarding anything that they're buying and selling within the sponsorship space. So we're really doubling down on getting as accessible as we possibly can to show all of these relationships and contexts. And then, as always, how do we get better and more accurate? Because that's the big thing, is data accuracy.
Excellent. That will, of course, have a continued knock-on effect to the number of people required for you guys to continue to support the ever-growing demand and add these new features. So one thing we were chatting about, again, off air, was that probably the only thing that didn't happen as much as you thought when we were talking on the first interview was the level of scalable growth on the headcount side. So when you look at the next 18 months, for you guys to accomplish the goals that you're setting, what effect is that going to have on your current team? What opportunities are going to be for people to come and join you on this mission?
Yeah, so one of the things I said was we're going to scale up our workforce. Now, of course, I'm going to say that again. I don't want to sit here and say, because it's an interesting time in tech, right? So there's a lot of weirdness going on and that front. And we're maybe in some ways we're blessed in that we did not jump headfirst into that like a lot of places did last year. But we do have to scale up from the sense that we've accomplished a lot of what we've done without really a gigantic sales team. You don't have people knocking on doors. A lot of the internal discussions are, this is the year that we go public with a lot of our sort of like PR and marketing front of who we are and all of that, and really trying to push, because we feel that our tech is in a place that no one else is. And we feel like we are able to do things that no one else can. And we've doubled down on accuracy of data, and we have a lot more control, and we could do a lot more experimental things. All of the pieces are in place for us to be able to do things that no one else can do. And so now it's time to go plant our flag and really talk about it. And from that comes growth in every single space. So we've had some discussions about adding on the sales, and from the sales, as soon as the sales start coming in, then we're adding into the engineering space. If it were up to me, I would hire 30 engineers tomorrow. We'd have no shortage of things that we want to build out, and no shortage of features that we want to add, and no shortage of, we have all this great data, and the problem is getting it into a space that allows clients to be able to use it more effectively. So that's where I want to build. So if I could throw 50 engineers at that cost tomorrow, I definitely would. I kind of joke that I've got 3 years of roadmap and not enough people to actually sit down and implement it for me. So it's definitely going to have to be scaling up engineering. And then from there, the more that we have the ability to translate it into product, the more I want to be out in front of it. We've really positioned data science as that R&D arm that can look at data, see how it works, come up with insights, and then almost design products in very small ways, and then spec it out, build little prototypes, and then send it over to the engineering space to actually implement. And we've just now started to see that come to fruition, where the ideas and things that we've tried to do from a broadcast standpoint, from offering minute-to-minute data, DMA-specific data within different regions, all of that data started with questions over on data science and then gets moved into product feature sets and offerings over the course of the coming months. And so it's identifying that we're going to be scaling up all the way across the org, from customer service to everything. So it starts with that front line of sales. Sales, you have to get somewhat profitable before you can start to build up this workforce.
Very exciting stuff. So I'll finish on my final question then, which is speaking to an audience of potential future employees. What is it that, if you were sat out for coffee with a machine learning engineer that you want to hire, what is it that you tell them about the work, the mission, the impact that would get someone to join MVP over some of the other great companies currently hiring?
It's funny. I'm glad you asked that, because we're in sports. Like, sports is cool, but maybe not to somebody who's interested in machine learning. Right? They maybe don't have a huge overlap, but if they do, then that's the big selling point, right? Is that we're working in sports and we're working in sponsorship. So you work with a lot of really cool brands, and because it's sports and because there's such a passionate following of sports fans, there's so much data out there that you can really look at. And because we have an R&D development type arm, nothing's off the table. We're ingesting some things related to betting right now. I have some ideas that I won't share here because you have an audience and we're going to try to see if we can turn it into product, but we're not 100% sure how we're going to productize the data that comes from betting lines and things, but we have some great ideas. And so what we can do is we can sit down as a team and go, all right, here's the data that we're getting based on bets or volume or whatever that exists. Here's all these other data sets. Does any of this seem like something that can answer some really cool questions? And I think there's very few positions out there that work like that, specifically on the data science side. You get to do really cool querying and question answer kinds of things. You don't wake up and have somebody say like, today we're going to build this thing. There's the ability to think and discover and think about ways we could use things. And we routinely have questions about the data that we have that we'll ask, and those turn into really cool marketing pieces. So I would encourage you, if you were thinking about coming to talk to me about a position, look at a lot of our marketing stuff, because some of that comes from, hey, we have this data set, we have this thing we could do, let's give it a shot. And then we do it on a one-off use case or something because we need to vet the idea and test it out. And then we don't lose that data because we kick it over to marketing and say, here's this thing we found. Here's this really neat thing that we can do with our data that tells an interesting story. And then they'll go, oh, that's awesome. And then they'll do the marketing stuff to it. They'll add some cool visualizations and some better understandings and storytelling to it. And they do a great job of that. And then we sit down and document it all out. And then we move on to some next really cool questions that we can answer. And eventually something happens where we're like, okay, now we think this would be something. We do some research in the market and it's something that could be a feature, and we start to write out the requirements to build it over to product. So it's a really neat way to position the company that way.
Brandon, great to have you back on the show, man. Congrats for all the continued success. It's an exciting space that you're working in, which is really new and emerging, and you get to operate on the bleeding edge and really change the landscape for sports advertising, which I find very cool and interesting. And obviously the growth that you're talking about means there's going to be opportunity for people to come join, and that sounds like fun work. So we wish you, the team, and everyone at MVP continued success. And looking forward to having you back on the show in another year or two and hear about all the great accomplishments.
I'm happy to be back anytime. I appreciate it. It's always a good time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.